There is a country on this earth with more ancient pyramids than Egypt, and most people alive today could not name it. How Sudan has more ancient pyramids than Egypt is not a trick question and not an exaggeration. It is a fact buried under a century of assumptions about who built what, and why the world only remembers half the story. Start with the number that should stop you cold. Egypt, the country every schoolchild learns to associate with pyramids, holds around 118 of them. Sudan, a country most people could not point to on a map, holds somewhere between 200 and 255. That is not a rounding error. That is double the count, sitting in the desert of a nation whose ancient history rarely makes it into a textbook, a documentary, or a museum wing large enough to match its scale. So the question is not whether this is true. It is why you never heard it, and why a kingdom capable of outbuilding the most famous civilization in human history has been reduced, in most people's minds, to a footnote in someone else's story. The answer starts along a stretch of the Nile that Egypt never fully controlled, a region the Egyptians themselves called Kush. For centuries, Kush was treated by its northern neighbor the way a powerful nation treats a resource-rich frontier. Raided for gold, raided for labor, occasionally garrisoned, rarely respected. But Kush was not a colony waiting to be absorbed. It was a kingdom building its own institutions, its own religious centers, its own claim to the Nile's legacy, quietly, patiently, for generation after generation, while Egypt assumed the story of the river belonged to it alone. Then, around 750 BC, the story inverted. Kushite kings did not simply resist Egyptian power. They marched north, crossed into Egypt itself, and took the throne. For close to a century, Nubian pharaohs ruled Egypt as its 25th dynasty, controlling territory that stretched from the heart of Sudan to the Mediterranean coast. Statues from this era show these kings with unmistakably Nubian features, wearing double uraeus crowns that marked their rule over two kingdoms at once. This is one of the strangest omissions in popular history. The pharaohs of this dynasty are still taught, when they are taught at all, as simply Egyptian, as if the identity of the men on the throne were a footnote rather than the headline. That rule did not last. Assyrian armies pushed south with iron weapons the Kushites could not match at the time, and the 25th dynasty retreated from Egypt, back toward the homeland it had come from. It is worth sitting with that moment because most kingdoms in that position simply disappear from the record, absorbed or erased by the very power that pushed them out. Most empires that lose their conquered territory begin to fade from memory at that exact moment. Kush did not. It regrouped, relocated its center of power, and did something almost no defeated dynasty manages. It kept building on a scale that would eventually outlast the very civilization it had once ruled. The kingdom's capital shifted first to Napata and eventually further south to Meroe, a city positioned deliberately beyond the reach of the empires now dominating the north, first the Persians, later the Romans. And it was at Meroe, safely distant from the armies that had humbled it before, that Kush built the vast majority of its pyramids. Picture what that decision actually meant. This was a kingdom that had already lost the throne of Egypt, already been pushed back to its own borders, and it responded not by abandoning the pyramid as a symbol, but by doubling down on it, generation after generation, long after the pharaohs of Egypt had stopped building pyramids of their own entirely. The pyramids of Meroe do not look like the ones at Giza, and that difference tells its own story. They are far smaller, some barely the height of a house, with sides raked at a steeper, sharper angle than their Egyptian ancestors. Each one is fronted by a small offering chapel on its eastern face, carved with scenes of kings and queens being welcomed by the gods into the next life. These are not failed imitations of Egyptian design. They are a distinct architectural tradition, refined and repeated across centuries, built by a civilization that had inherited the pyramid form and then made it entirely its own. And Meroe was not some isolated outpost surviving on faded prestige. It was an economic power in its own right, built on iron production at a scale that made it one of the most significant metalworking centers in the ancient world. Its merchants sent goods along trade routes reaching Rome in one direction and India in the other. Its scribes developed their own script, Meroitic, carved into stone monuments and painted onto temple walls, a writing system that functioned independently of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Here is where the story turns from remarkable to almost unbearable. We can read the sounds of Meroitic. Linguists cracked the alphabet more than a century ago, but we still cannot fully translate what it says. There are royal names on these stones that specialists can pronounce with confidence, sentences they can sound out syllable by syllable, and yet the meaning of long stretches of this language remains locked away, unreadable, waiting for a breakthrough that has not yet come. So a civilization built more pyramids than Egypt, ruled Egypt outright for nearly a century, forged an iron economy that reached two continents, and left behind a written language modern scholars still cannot fully read. Why does none of this sit at the center of how the ancient world gets taught? Part of the answer is uncomfortable, and it has less to do with the evidence in the ground than with the people who first dug it up. When European archaeologists arrived at these sites in the 19th and early 20th centuries, many came already convinced that sub-Saharan Africans could not have engineered monuments on this scale without outside influence. Some credited the pyramids to Egyptian settlers, or to some unnamed foreign hand, rather than to the Nubian kingdom that plainly built them, ruled from them, and was buried inside them. That assumption did not just shape old academic papers. It shaped which sites got funded, which got excavated, which got written into the textbooks that generations of students, including you, likely grew up reading. The pyramids themselves were never lost, never hidden beneath centuries of sand waiting for rediscovery the way certain Egyptian tombs were. They have stood in the Sudanese desert this entire time, weathering the same sun, visible to anyone who traveled far enough to look. What went missing was not the monuments. What went missing was the willingness to say plainly that a kingdom in Sudan outbuilt Egypt, ruled Egypt, and still holds secrets in its own language that no one alive today can fully unlock. The stones have been waiting in that desert far longer than most of us have been alive, patient in a way that history rarely rewards. The only thing that changed is that now, finally, someone told you where to look.